Two-step equations continued. Here we have our hydraulic system. Now we're going to cover over a few things to understand a certain relationship. So we can see we have our smaller piston on the left and our larger piston on the right. So what we need to understand is that we can put in 10 pounds on our smaller piston, which is our input, and then as a result we can get 100 pounds, so it gets like multiplied. And so in order for that to happen though, there is something we need to also understand, is that our input force, which we'll put as E, is then multiplied by the distance traveled. So if it goes up or down, the distance of that, and then it's equal to the force output, which is on the right, times the distance of traveled for the larger piston. And so what needs to be understood is that if we put in 10 pounds of force on the left and say we go 1 inch, then we get a result of 100 pounds. This distance has to be 1/10. So in order for this relationship to work, we can see that if we increase here, this must be decreased in order for this relationship to hold true. Now let's go look at a few examples like this. Example 1. The input piston force is 50 pounds and the input piston distance is 3 inches. What is the output piston distance if the output force is 200 pounds? So we have our relationship and we're going to need to plug in our numbers. So we have 50 pounds for our input force, which is right here. Then our distance is 3 inches. And then we have our output force of 200 pounds. So we are looking for the distance. So let's go ahead and plug it in now. So we have 50 times 3, which is equal to 200. And then we'll just keep it as RD, as our variable. Or you could put X. You can do any variable you want. So the first step we need to do is to multiply the left-hand side. So we go 50 times 3, which is equal to 150. Our next thing is to have this 200 RD. We want to get RD by itself, as it's the variable. So what we do is we're going to divide by 200 on both sides, as this is a multiplication, and so to undo multiplication we divide. And then this just becomes 1. So now we have 150 over 200. So we can go ahead and calculate that out. So we'll just divide, and we get RD is equal to 0.75, and this is in inches as its distance. So here's our output piston distance. So now let's look at another example. Example 2. What is the input piston force if the input distance is 10 inches and the output force is 200 pounds, with an output distance of 2 inches? So once again, we are going to be solving the same equation, but this time we're asking what the input piston force is. So we have our input distance of 10 inches, which is the ED. And then we have our output force of 200 pounds, which is our R here. And then we have our 2 inches, which is our output piston distance, which is RD. So now we're solving for E. So let's go ahead and start filling in our variables with numbers now. So we have 10 E. And then we have equals, and then we have R, which is 200 times RD, which is 2. So the first thing we do is we're going to take care of the right-hand side first, and we're going to multiply that out. And then 200 times 2 is just 400. And then we have 10e on the left. And then how to get e by itself is we're going to divide by 10. These are just ones. And then we have to do it to the right-hand side, because whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. And so now e becomes 40. So this is in pounds. Now, if you weren't sure, we can always get our calculators out. And we could have done this like this. 200 times 2, which got us to the 400. And then we divide by 10. And then we can confirm we did 40. So now let's look at another example. Example 3. What is the output distance of the output piston if the input distance is 10 inches and the input force is 10 pounds? And then the output force is 250 pounds. So this time we are looking for RD. So we have our input distance, 10 inches, and our force, and then our output force of 250. So let's fill this in. So we have 10 times 10, which is equal to 250 times RD, which is what we're solving for. So like before, we're going to take care of the left-hand side first. So we get 100. Then on the right, we have 250 RD. What we need to do is divide by 250 on both sides. This just becomes 1, and now we have 100 over 250. So let's get our calculators out. So we have 100 divided by 250, and we get 0.4. So our output distance is 0.4 inches. So hopefully you can start seeing the mathematical relationship. If this right-hand side is 250 pounds, then that means this distance has to be pretty small to equal the left-hand side.